Okay. Hi, folks. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Sinead. I'm the Platform and Solutions Team Administrator. Welcome along to the 2024 March Upgrade webinar. I'll pass you over shortly to my colleague Mark, who is our UI UX manager here at SmartSimple. Just before we get started, a couple reminders. You can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you've got any questions, and we'll run through them at the very end. Please note as well that I will be sending out the recording of this webinar, as well as a short survey at the end of the week for your thoughts. With that, I'll hand it over to Mark. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to stop my video because I'm going to start sharing my screen. So let me do that now. As Sinead had said, you can just start popping your questions into the chat. And without further ado, let's start talking about the March 2024 upgrade. All right. So first thing I want to mention to everybody is what we're talking about will always be listed on wiki.smartsimple.com. And the first card right here says upgrades. If you click that card, you can see what is going to happen in the current upgrade. Excuse me. All right, so first thing I want to draw your attention to here is when the upgrades happen. So the key release is going to be March 14th. And for those who don't know, the key release is typically for our North American clients, whereas the global release is typically for more of our European clients and our managed dedicated clients. So depending on where you are or your environment, you may have one or the other. The backup will get updated 2 weeks prior. And if you're ever wondering, we list out 2 years worth of all of our upgrades right here, so you always know when the dates are going to be. All right, it's typically the second Thursday of every month, typically. All right, there's usually a 5-minute or so upgrade video where we go over some of the highlights in case you can't make this. And we just recently added this new section right here. For those of you that maybe if it's too long and you don't have time to read the whole article, because I know there's a lot of information, you can kind of see just a broad overview here if you didn't want to watch the 5-minute video or read through everything. So my plan is to kind of go through the stuff that's here. And while I'm doing that, my hope is that you'll put questions into the chat, and then I can answer those and go into more depth for anyone who wants once I've kind of gone through it. So the first thing I want to show, and I'm going to show it over live, is a delegation. So delegation, if you've never used delegation, it's a great feature for, let's say I'm going away on vacation or have some type of temporary absence. And while I'm away, I want someone else to basically take care of my tasks for task continuity. Now, typically what you might do is you might go into the different records that you're looking after, and you might assign somebody else so they have permission to see those. But there's a much easier way of doing that, which is called delegation. So I can just come into here and I can go to delegation, for example, and I can specify who I'm going to delegate to. So while I'm on vacation, Joe is going to take over for me. I'm going to give him permission to emulate me, which means he can see and do the same things I can do. And I do it for a finite amount of time. And optionally, I can put in this message. If I put the message in, it'll show up on my profile so people know that I'm away for that period of time and who to contact. Now, this isn't a new feature, but we used to be under the personal settings, and not everybody gives access to the personal settings to all your users. So we've moved that out to right up here, so it's a little more visible, and so more people can take advantage of it. One of the nice things about the delegation feature is me as a system administrator, I can even delegate to another system administrator, which you can't do with the normal emulation. And also it's not restricted to internal people. So you can permission this. So let's say I've got an applicant, and that applicant for some reason can't fill in their portion of an application in time or something. They can delegate themselves to a co-applicant or maybe somebody else who can help them fill in that application on their behalf. So again, there's a lot of utility in this feature. So just once again, the delegation, if you permissioned it, is going to be now right here. And if you didn't know kind of where to or how to permission it, I'll show you that too just while we're here. So if I go to global settings and I go to security, and then it's under system feature permissions. My apology, my voice is cracking a little bit there. So, again, just throw something in the chat if you need me to slow down or repeat anything. And I go to features, and then I can just do a Control F here to find delegate. And there we go. I can see here's the two settings. So you can say basically which roles can delegate. So my role, I can delegate. And then who can I delegate to? So that's how you can control the visibility of that. The next thing I want to show you, and that's going to happen automatically. If you have permission to see the delegations, that link will move. Obviously, if you don't have permission, you won't see the link either way. So the next thing I want to show you is the maps. So lots of people make list views. List views are great. But if you want a proximity list view, it's another list view option. And in this upgrade, we made this window bigger. So you have more context about what's going on. And I just want to walk you through kind of how this list view can work. So for example, here, let's say I'm traveling to New York and I want to go visit some of my clients in the area. So I've got a list view of my clients. I entered in here where I'm going to be. And it's like, who's going to be within 50 kilometers. And so I can see here's that list, and it shows me how close they're going to be to where I am. And I can click on them and I can find more information, or I can click here and get more information. Now, if you've never set this up before, I'm going to walk you through that real quick. So again, it's a common list view. So I just set the list view. I picked the columns that I want to show. And then I went to the proximity search tab. And here I just toggled on enable map and proximity search. And this is where I would pick whether I want to show organizations or users. It's like, where is this address coming from that we're mapping on this list view? Or maybe it's a level 2 address because it's a record. So it could be like where the work is happening around a grant, or it could be where the organization's located, or maybe where the user's located. Then I also pick here, now I chose New York. I manually typed that in, but I can choose different options, like where I'm located now, where my address home base is. And then when I clicked on that marker on the map, that's where all this is. So I can, again, add which fields I want to show up in this if I click on that marker. So once again, the big thing here is if you never use the proximity list view, this map window is getting much bigger for more clarity. So that's going to also happen automatically if you're using that. Now let's talk about some things that you have to opt into. So the first thing, I'm going to go over here to SmartFolders. And if you've never used SmartFolders before, it's an online file storage and management. It comes with the system. So a lot of times we'll store files in here and then reference them. Maybe they're help files, maybe they're configuration files. Maybe you want to share things from this. So this is an older part of the system that hasn't been touched in a while. And what we've done here is we've kind of enhanced the interface, and I'm going to show you about it to kind of update it. And you have to opt into this. So there's this button up here, this toggle, that lets you opt into it. And if you opt into it, you will see things like we've introduced a grid view. So for example, I can now see in a more visual format my files and my folders. So it's a lot nicer way of seeing this. We've also got the big drag and drop here. So again, if I want to drop many files in, I can drag and drop, or I click here to browse them. And some of the major actions are found here versus some other minor actions are found underneath the ellipsis. If I want to change the settings around this, I can jump into here, and this is where I would control the permissions around who can access this folder, and similar types of things. Now, again, as I was saying, this is the new grid view. If you still like the traditional tabular view, you can also switch it that way. And so again, I see the same files, but it's more of a tabular view where I can see more information. I can sort on columns. And with this one, for example, I can multi-select and say I want to do different actions. So for example, I'll just download these files, or maybe I want to expire these. I only want them available here for a certain period of time. I can do that. Or maybe I want to move them to another folder. There's all sorts of different things. Now, if I don't want to move them in mass, or I don't want to expire them in mass, I also still have the ellipsis here, which has even more options. So for example, I could email this to somebody right here. Now, there's a few other things here. I'm just going to think. Let's say, for example, that I wanted to find a specific file. So there was an image there, I think it was called nutrition, and I want to find that. I can use the basic file search here and just type in something and it shows up. And if that's not enough, I can, let's say I want to find something that was modified recently. I can't remember what it was called. I can go into here and I can do the advanced search and I can set a date range. So I can figure out which files were most recently added or which are my biggest files. Or again, I can do, and this one is an exact file, exact name search on the file name. So I'll do, in this time, I'll do nut with a wildcard. And if I search that again, I can see that comes up. Right. The last thing I want to talk about with this is that we introduced this left navigation. So before it was tabs all across the top. Now it's a left navigation. And maybe people may not know this, especially if you're not a system admin, but this used to just be called general. So now we called it files. And when we say files here, we're talking about, this is like physical files that we've uploaded, kind of like a Dropbox or something like that. So you can drop your files in there. Down here, this one's called system files. It used to be called configuration files. And this is kind of a combination. There's either configuration files in here, or it's typically used for the autoloader or export storage. And again, the configuration, these files are more saved in the database, whereas these are, again, more like physical files, the autoloader and the export storage. My apologies. One other thing you can see here, and I just want to draw your attention to it, is that this folder, I've internet enabled it. And what that means is that any files I stick into this folder, I can share those with other people. So I can come in here and I can get this link, for example, and give it to someone and they can access it. Now you can do that as well with the other files if they're not internet enabled, but they'll have to be logged into the system. So, if you have information that you're trying to share amongst other people, then you can share them that way. The one thing I really want to caution people is be very careful about turning this on, because if you're sharing it, everyone can see it, right? So you really want to make sure if you have any folders with internet enable on, to just double check those, because anybody can see it. Although you're sharing it with anyone can also see it. There's no restriction on that. The last two things here, quarantine. So again, when you upload files to the system, they get a virus scan. And if they are suspected of having a virus, they'll be dropped into here. And likewise, expired files, when I showed you this, you can pick a date to expire that file. It'll show up here. And once it shows up here, you can restore that. So again, if you have any questions about anything I'm talking about today, just start putting them in the chat and I will come back to that at the end. So the next thing I really want to talk about is our SmartSimple AI feature set. So I'm not going to go into like a deep dive on this, because I know we're going to have a demonstration at Unite and there's going to be a campaign around this. But I just wanted to highlight some of the stuff that we're working on right now. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can really kind of improve your processes and do things quicker using these language libraries. And if it's something you're interested in, you will need a OpenAI license or similar license, and you'll need to reach out to us to kind of enable this in your system. And if people are interested, I can talk a little more to it a little later on. But for now, I'm just going to, oh, actually, I want to show you one more thing before I jump away from that. So if I come here and I click on this link, actually even better, let me just, before I do that, let me do something else instead. I'll draw your attention to, before I even get to there, is on the home page. We recently added this. So again, some of these features are already live. Some of them are being developed right now, but you can kind of get a sneak peek here. So if you come to the home page, you can see that we've added this AI card. And if you click on the AI card, it brings you to kind of an overview article that, again, talks about some of the things, some of the features, the AI features that are available within the system. And gives you the syntax that we would use for doing these. And if you go into any of these ones, for example, it's just got some basic instructions for, why would you use this, maybe how you would configure this. So again, before it's even live to play with it, we've started putting out some of these instructions and descriptions and things so that you can kind of get an idea of what's coming down the pipe, so to speak. All right. As I said, there'll be a big full demo of that later by somebody else, but I did want everyone to be aware of it. And I'll get more to more of the explanation of some of the things that we're doing as well a little later. The next thing I want to talk about is this logo here. So for those people who are on screen readers, we always put alt text with our images, the alternative text, so that if I can't see what that logo says, I can hear a description of it and know what that image is. Now, when we add the logo, we typically do it here on the branding tab. So this is where you can't see it because it's a white logo on a white background, but believe me, there's a logo there. So we'd upload it here. It isn't a new thing, but what is people may not be aware of is that we can also add translations for that logo. And so what I've done here is, let's say if I'm in Spanish, and for example, if my organization had a different logo for Spanish speakers, I can actually upload that here and I can put different alternate text for my Spanish speakers. So not something that everyone uses, but in theory, if you did support multiple languages and you had a different logo for each language, you can drop it in here. And then when someone changes their language, they will see a different logo. So it is some built-in functionality. The next thing I want to show you is about portals. So I'm going to show you the portals from, really it's about portal buttons. So I'm going to go in here to a portal right now. And I'm going to preview this portal. So this is just a sample portal I made up. And in the sample portal, I've added some buttons. Now, these are really easy buttons. They're not shortcuts. So down here, I've got shortcuts. So here's some image shortcuts, and there's an aggregate here, some other shortcuts. But what I want to do is I want to have some buttons in here. So it's really easy to make these buttons in your portal. I'll show you how I did it in a couple seconds. The buttons themselves aren't new, but what we've added is, much like you can do with shortcuts, you can now choose how you want these buttons to open. So the first button here, organization profile, in my scenario, I'm going to say that I want this person to do extensive editing on this, and they may even navigate around from it. And so when they click this button, I'm going to have it make it open in a main window. So there you go. You see, when I click that button, it opens in the main window. And that's because I wanted someone to probably edit this. Maybe I want them to navigate around. Conversely, if I don't want someone to do a lot of work with that record, maybe I just want them to check something or change something really quick and then just kind of close it, and I don't want them to lose context, I can open that in a modal window. So here I go. So now you can see, here it is. I open up my profile and it's in a modal window, and I can just close that without losing context to the page I was on. Right, so I'm going to show you how I set that up. So first of all, I'm going to go into the configuration mode for portals. Not everyone might not know that exists. And I'm going to click on this gear. So that's going to take me to this section right here. And from that, now I can see here's that section. It's a banner. And I can see at the top of my banner, I have this text template. So right down here, these are the two buttons. And creating the buttons is super simple. So again, I can just put some text in there. I can look up what I wanted. So in my case, I wanted something from the user, and I want them to be able to edit their profile, let's say. That adds the link in there for me automatically. And here's where I pick. So I can say, okay, if I just want them to open up window, look at it, and not lose context, I can pick the modal window, which is good for those kind of simple tasks. But if someone's going to navigate around or do more things, then I would select the current window. And that's it. And you just hit apply, and that button would have shown up. So that's a really easy way to add some buttons to your portal to do certain things. And you have that choice now of how to open them, just like you used to, like you can for shortcuts and other links. All right, jump out of there. So the next thing I wanted to show you, and this kind of goes back to kind of our push with documentation here. So if I go into global settings and I go into branding, one of the things that we've added now is a new help file. So on pages, configuration pages, we've added a kind of a page level help. And so instead of jumping out to the wiki to try and figure out how to use this or what does this setting mean, we've started adding these to some of the newer pages. So I know this isn't a new page, but a lot of the AI pages, for example, receive this now. And so it gives a kind of a brief description of what you're going to do with this page. If there's any gotchas, so here we talk about if you're going to change the colors on your system, maybe you want to check them for color contrast because you'll need that to ensure you're meeting accessibility standards. And then if I come down here, for example, sometimes it's not evident what something does by a 1 or 2 word label on a caption, right? Like highlight. Well, what does highlight really mean, right? So I can come over here and look at it and I get a description of, what this really controls. And then we've even done so far as to say, okay, well, we recommend you use something like this. And you can see that the highlight color actually changes the color of the input when I click into it. And we also mentioned that you probably shouldn't use gray. And the reason why I say that is if I jump over to the list view here, for example, and I click on that, you can see it changes to that highlight color. But you can see that here, there's a gray icon for clearing the search. Now, if I made this gray, and this is gray, then it wouldn't have enough sufficient contrast to pass accessibility standards. So again, we're just trying to help everyone configure with confidence with some of these help files. So it is a new construct that we've just added, and I hope you guys like it. Hope everyone likes it. But do let us know. The next thing I want to show you is if I go to my profile and I come in here to edit my roles and access. So you can see here that for security reasons or compliance, sometimes people will set expiry dates on users. Maybe I can only be allowed in the system for 6 months or whatever it is for your business process. You can now report on these 2 fields, both the expiry and the expiry date. So whether a user's going to expire and expiry date. And then you could set up your own report export or something like that, or email somebody and let them know that's like, hey, by the way, these users are going to expire. They're going to lose access to the system next month. In case you want to have any follow-up actions, maybe you need to reach out to them and let them know. Maybe you should renew that and give them further access again. And while we're talking about access, I don't know if everyone knows this, but if I go to global settings, let me see if I remember where this is. I think it's under, let me see if it's under this one. Yeah, so right here, there's actually a tab here which says lists all your global administrators and whether they have access or not. So again, it was under system security summary. You can click on this button, and I'm not going to do it because it shows all of our global admin users, but you may want to go there from time to time and just check it to make sure that all these people still need global admin access to your system. So that's an easy way. You don't even have to run a report. You can just go to that tab and you'll see that. So again, just making sure that you're checking that all the people who have access, especially global administrator access, should still have it on your system. So let me just bring this over and see it. Yeah, we added some different things here this is more for system admins now. So there's a different way to authenticate using user access tokens. If you're uploading to people's profiles using JSON, you can now use the autoloader for that. With ORCID, so ORCID is primarily used by our research people, and you may have an ORCID profile. Maybe you're populating information in ORCID from within SmartSimple. If you are, there may be people associated with that record that you're going to import into ORCID that you don't want to bring over. I don't want to take these users out of SmartSimple and bring them over because maybe they weren't contributing to that piece of research. So we've added an exclude flag. So I can say basically, when you're importing this information, don't take these people that are associated with this record. They're not to move over. So that's something new for our ORCID users. I'm going to go share the subject line for notes. And I will answer all your questions very shortly. Just want to go through a few more things. Oh, so it was right here. All right. So often people will use notes around your records. And I don't know if everyone knows, but there's 2 different layouts or looks to the notes that you can have. So for example, here, I've included the subject line. And again, that's not a new thing, but now when you're auto-loading notes, if I want to auto-load a bunch of notes to a record, I can now add that subject line. But let me just show you how you turn that on. So if I go to global settings, and I believe, let me double check here. So system tab, and there's usually a toggle here. There it is. Enable subject line for notes. So if I turn that on, I get notes on my I get subject line on my notes. And if I turn it off, I don't. And I think by default, everyone has it off. But if you want that, well, you can add it. The next thing, which is I want to talk about, which is not necessarily upgrade related, is for those using the test of production. So some people have maybe a dev environment and a staging environment and some other testing environment before they promote it to production. And if you're using the T2P tool or the test of production, we've modified that tool so that you can now choose a modified date. So I'm only going to bring over things that changed between some time frame. And that's really going to help speed up that tool because it's only going to compare certain records and only bring over certain records. So you may want to reach out, if you're someone who uses that tool, you may want to reach out to support for the updated version because it's going to help speed up the amount of time it takes to do that process. And really the last couple of things here is the assignment grid if you're using that, which again is typically used to assign multiple people to a specific record in different roles. It's been updated because we eliminated a third party. And then the last thing I want to talk about was if you're using the AI within the system, if you've opted into that, we've switched over the default from ChatGPT 3.5 to GPT-4. So that's going to happen automatically if you've not specified which one you're using. So without any further ado then, hopefully we've got some questions here to answer and let's switch over and maybe I can dive a little deeper for some of you into some of these things.
Great. So our first question is, in SmartFolders, is there a way of determining if specific files are being used somewhere within your portal? I would like to clean up our folders, but don't want to mistakenly delete something that is still being used.
That's a great question. Currently, there's not a way that I know of, but if people don't know, I'm going to segue into something different. If people don't know, on records themselves, there is a way to look at if custom fields are being used, but not smart folders. So again, I don't know if everyone's aware of that. Let me go into custom field here. So yeah, so unfortunately, yeah, the answer is not currently, but what I do want to show you while I've got you here and I'm thinking about it is that, for example, if I go into a field, because not everyone knows this, I'm in a custom field right now. There's something called search reference, which people may not know. So if you're trying to clean up fields, you can kind of see where fields are used. So I can see that this field appears in some reports, it appears in some list views. Unfortunately, we don't have that functionality around smart folders, but that would be a great suggestion. I don't know the logistics of it or if it's possible, but unfortunately, it's a no right now.
Okay, next we have, if I have files in the system files that are templates, which should be accessible to any applicant or prospective applicant, do you suggest I put them in the help folder now?
So if they're, let me jump into smart folders again and make sure see if I got this right. So this folder, I just made this folder called help files. It's not like files is it's kind of just general files like physical files stored on the server, and the system files, those are more for configuration, and they're a combination of physical files and kind of configuration files. So when I create one of these, which is what I did here, so if I create a file folder, I just give it a name. These are the normal ones. So you can put whatever you want into these ones. The big difference here is the system files, there's two different kinds within, which is a bit confusing. So there's the configuration, which are typically, these are files typically used with configuration. They have a 16 megabyte limit on them, but these are stored in the database. So you may want to use these, I don't know, maybe you have a logo or something in here or something that's used as part of your configuration you want to pull along. whereas an autoloader, these are for the bigger files that are going to get stored in here. So the question was, I know I'm going roundabout here. Should I move them from the system files? You don't have to move them from the system files. I believe both of these you can make web enabled, I believe. Let me just check. Yeah. So I don't think you have to move anything really, unless I've misunderstood the question. But maybe let me know if I've misunderstood the question. And but either are fine. Really, it's kind of it depends on the personal preference or the purpose of what you're doing. And I guess this is a good point too that I'm going to bring up that if you want advice on your configuration, you can always reach out to support, but you can also reach out to the platform solutions team as well. They've got people standing by to kind of give advice on these kind of questions where it's really like, it's not so much, how do I do this, but what's the best way of doing this? So often, SmartSimple is so robust. There's a million ways to do things. But sometimes there's better ways of doing things than other ways, and it may not always be evident. So again, I just want to highlight that you have these options where if you're doing the configuration yourself, you can reach out to both support and or platform solutions, and they can give you advice on these kind of things.
Great, thank you. The next one is, could you show how to get to the portal settings shortcut to show up? I only seem to be able to navigate this via global settings / portals, etc.
Okay, so you want to see, and you may have to repeat that question for me again, Shane. So
Could
they
you
want
show
to, you go ahead.
could you show how to get to the portal settings shortcut to show
Sure.
up? I only seem to be able to navigate this from global settings, portals, etc.
All right. So let's go about shortcuts. So if I go to users, there's different ways of getting here, but I go to users, I'm going to go to portals, and I'm going to go into the applicant role because that was the one I set up earlier. So if I want to go to shortcuts, I can come up here and I can see these are the shortcuts that I've created for this role. And then I can edit these shortcuts. So here's the charity one that we had showing up. So here it is. This is the shortcut. And this is where I would set up, the name, the title. Some of them I can change the background and such. There's a bunch of settings here, and I can see where this one is in use. So I can see that this one's used in this section, and I can even jump to that section. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you how to get there another way. So hopefully I'm not confusing anyone. So now I'm going to go back, start again. So I could have just clicked that button, which would have been really easy, but instead I'm going to do it the long, hard way, just to show you a different way. So I'll go back to users, I go to portal, I'm going to go into my portal, and let me go into this home page. So here's my home page, and inside there, I've got a section for my shortcuts. So if I've created that shortcut already on that role, I come down here into the shortcut list, and here's those 3 shortcuts you saw on my thing. And I can just click on look up shortcuts. If I wanted to add another one, say abacus, I just do that, and I would save, and now I would have that abacus shortcut there. I'm not going to actually add it though, but that's how you would add it to a portal section. Now, if the question was actually I wanted to add buttons, so what I just showed you now, I'm going to preview this. What I just showed you now was where I go to create shortcuts like these and how I would attach those shortcuts inside a shortcut section. Now, if the question was, again, how do I do these buttons? Then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my text template. It could have also been a banner or something like that. And then this is where I would add those buttons by using the plus button here. Now, you may also be saying while you're looking at what I did there, because it's like, well, maybe your pro didn't look like that, or maybe you didn't realize that you could do something like that. So I did something a little complex here. So what I did is it's called a section container. I made a section container, and inside that section container, I gave it a background, and then I put a text section inside and a shortcut section inside. And so that's how I built this, in case you're curious as to what I did there. That way I could get a background that spanned 2 sections. Hopefully that answers that question.
The next one is, what accessibility standards is SmartSimple following / using?
Oh, well, while we're talking about that, I want to highlight this article. So if I go to Wiki and I go to my favorite section, the user interface, we've got an article here about accessibility. And so I highly recommend, if you haven't already familiarized with stuff, but we follow WCAG 2.1 AA. So we're always targeting AA, WCAG 2.1. If possible, we will target higher, but this is what we always target. And there's a whole bunch of things on here. You know, again, I love this article itself. We talk about the screen readers, and if you don't know how to use a screen reader, there it is. We talk about some different legislation and things. And one thing I like to highlight too is how accessibility overlays. There's a lot of companies out there, and I know I'm going on a side tangent here, but there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to sell people overlays to try and make their sites accessible, and that doesn't, making your site accessible, unfortunately, is not as easy as putting an overlay on it. There's a lot more to making things accessible than dropping some JavaScript on a page. So anyway, and we talk about different ways of testing and some different tools that are common in the market as well. There's a whole bunch of information in here, even just some tips on stuff. So if you're interested in accessibility, I highly recommend, for example, like I usually tell people try not to use underlying text on the web because there's a strong identification that it could be a link. Be very careful with your BR tags because of the way they render. There's a lot of different things for system administrators to, if you're changing the content within your system, to really be aware of. And so this is a good article to kind of look through. Even there's some suggestions here about, layouts and things. I always try to push people towards a single column where possible, just because of reading orders and the different way people interpret things. So again, I've gone on too far of a tangent there, but yeah, I highly recommend the accessibility article. And then since you opened the door for this, I'll just go back 1 second. We also have another one about usability, because they're two different things. And so anyway, I recommend that also there's a usability article here. So again, we talk about usability as well, because sometimes people confuse the difference between usability and accessibility, right? And so this is all, there's some heuristics on here about how to test for usability and things like that if you're making changes or configuring, which I also highly recommend as a read.
Okay, we've just got a couple more. We have to finish up soon, but can you delegate permissions to someone who has different permissions or a different role? Will that user inherit my permissions?
Yes. So what happens is when you emulate, and when you emulate, that person basically gets the same rights and access as you have while they're emulating you. So let me just show that process for a second here. I believe I've got, just give me 1 second here. Okay, let me see if I'm gonna try and log out for a second and see if I've actually set this up. I believe I have a test user I've already set up with this, so I can show it to you, because that would really help. So let me, as we saw, I said Joe can emulate me, so I'm gonna log in as Joe. And see. So Joe doesn't have any specific permissions, but what this, because I delegated to him, he gets this icon here, and if he clicks this, he can switch from having no ability to do almost anything to emulating me. And once he emulates me, now you can see here that he's viewing the system as if he was me. So while he's in this mode, he can see the things that I can see, and he can do the things that I can do. And then when he's done, he says, I'm going to end that session. And boom, he goes back to his normal rights. So basically he can simulate being me. And when he does that, or emulate, when he does that, he can do the same things as I can. So I don't have to assign him to records. I don't have to give him permissions to do these things. And when he's in that, but he has to switch into this delegation role. And you can assign multiple people as a delegate as well. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, great. The last one is just when will proximity search / map option be available?
It's available right now. You can use that right now. As I said, if you have any list view you have in theory, you can just go to the proximity search tab and enable proximity search. The thing is that you have to choose which address you want to map. right? So obviously we can only pick addresses from users or organizations. So we've got some pre-picked here ones, or it has to be a level 2 on a record. So again, if maybe it's a grant record and it happens in a specific location, because often maybe your granting goes to an organization that might be downtown in the city, but the work's actually being done maybe in a suburb or something like that. You need to have a level 2 with an address on it to map to, so we can show that in the map. But it's available right now. Nothing special you have to turn on. You just have to make sure you're configured in such a way that you can you actually have addresses for the records that are going to show up. And ideally unique addresses as well. You wouldn't, I mean, in theory, they could have them all for the same city, but really, if you want to map something, you really want to have distinctive, unique addresses, as opposed to having like 100 things all in the same city, just on top of each other.
Okay,
Any
I
other
think,
questions?
yeah, there's just one more. How difficult is it to change the base map service? My company has its own GIS system.
Oh, okay. Now there's different mapping that you can use. Like we have the impact maps, which you can use. I think don't quote me on, but you might want to reach out to the platform solutions team. I believe there is a way, there may even be a mapping field that you can use with overlays on it as such. Um, this is just a baked in Google Maps in the list view itself, but there are other mapping options, and the best person to talk to that is probably the platform solutions team. They can probably outline the different mapping options and how to have overlays and that type of thing.
Okay, great, thank you. So just as a reminder, this will be a link to this recording will be sent out. It has been recorded, so you'll get that at the end of the week. Thank you, Mark, for walking us through that. And if you
And
have any questions, you can email platformsolutions@smartsimple.com
yeah,
and we can
and
hopefully
just
help you with anything
sorry.
else.
And one last thing, just in case anyone missed it, yeah, the WCAG standard that we're targeting is 2.1 AA. That was it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Cheers.